Sign it and get out of here before dawn. This house needs a new owner, someone cleaner than you." That wasn't a fever reducer. It was a bucket of ice water thrown directly into my delirium. Those were the words of Michael, my husband. The man I once thought was my entire world. The man whose every step I had silently supported. I was curled up on the cold hardwood floor of the master bedroom in our Beverly Hills mansion. The third day of a high fever was torturing me. My joints ached as if pricked by 1,000 needles. My throat was parched and burning like I had swallowed hot coals. Outside, a classic Los Angeles downpour lashed against the windows, the rumble of thunder mixing with the chaotic thumping of my own heart. I forced my heavy eyelids open to look at him. Michael stood there, sleek in an expensive suit, but reeking of strong liquor mixed with a woman's perfume. It was a pungent, cheap scent, utterly foreign. In his hand was not the glass of water or medicine I had just weakly begged for. In his hand was a blue file folder, a pen already clipped to it. What did you say?" My voice cracked, raw and pathetic. It sounded so wretched even I felt a sting of self-pity. He tossed the folder onto my face, the hard edge of the binder striking my cheek, a sharp, stinging pain. "Divorce papers. I've already signed. You're a useless invalid. Having you in this house is just bad for my career." He sneered. His eyes, once filled with affection, now held nothing but contempt. He walked over to the window, looking down at the driveway where the glossy black Porsche he had just bought sat arrogantly in the rain. "Look, Eleanor, that's my status now. This mansion, that car. It's all mine, earned by me. And you," he continued, "a frumpy, washed-up housewife who only knows how to hide in the kitchen in a wrinkled robe. Do you really think you're still worthy of sitting in the passenger seat next to me?" He paused. "But before we go on, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching this from. Your support is what motivates me to continue this story." I remained silent, letting the physical and emotional pain tear me apart. "He thought I was poor. He thought I was a leech." "Crystal is moving in tomorrow morning," Michael added, his voice filled with pride as he mentioned her name. "She's young, beautiful, knows how to run a live stream business, knows how to network. She's the face I need when I'm meeting clients, not some bland woman like you." Crystal, the girl who sold dubious diet teas online, was now the standard of high society my husband aspired to. He turned back and pointed a finger at my face. A diamond ring I had never seen before flashing on it. "Listen carefully. 6 a.m. tomorrow is the perfect time for Crystal to move in. I don't want her to see any of your old junk left behind. You are not to take anything with you but the clothes on your back. Get out of my house." Immediately, I looked at the man standing menacingly before me, a sense of chilling unfamiliarity washing over me. 5 years of my youth, the sleepless nights spent drafting business plans for him under the guise of giving suggestions. The funds I had secretly funneled into his ventures to secure his promotions. All of it led to this moment. A divorce paper, thrown in my face while I was on the verge of death. I reached down and picked up the paper. My hand trembled from the fever, but my mind suddenly became strangely lucid. His cruelty had completely extinguished the last spark of weakness in me. "Fine," I whispered, my voice as cold as the rain outside. "I'll go. Just as you wish." 2 a.m. The roar of the Porsche's engine tore through the quiet night of Beverly Hills, then faded into the distance. Michael had left. He had gone to his mistress's place, leaving me alone in the oppressive darkness of the vast mansion he so proudly called his estate. Silence enveloped me, but strangely, as the sound of his car died, the physical pain seemed to numb as well. There was no one left to perform for, no one to hide my true self from. I pushed myself up, each vertebra protesting with a crackle. My trembling hand fumbled under the thick mattress of the king-sized bed. My fingers touched a familiar, cold object. Not the old, cheap flip phone I used daily in front of Michael, to play the part of a frugal, simple wife. I tossed it aside. What I pulled out was the latest model iPhone, its titanium casing cool to the touch. The screen lit up, recognizing my face instantly despite my pale, fever-stricken features. The blue light illuminated my face, highlighting a bitter, wry smile. It was time to drop the curtain. I tapped on a contact saved simply as Miss Davis. Before the third ring, the call was answered. The anxious face of Kimberly Davis, a woman the entire Los Angeles business world respectfully called the Iron Lady, CEO of LN Group, appeared on the screen. "Ma'am, you're calling at this hour." Miss Davis stopped short when she saw my condition. "My God, what happened to your face? Let me call 911. "No, 911. I cut her off, my voice hoarse but filled with an authority I had buried for the past 5 years to be my husband's shadow. "Miss Davis, initiate the asset liquidation protocol, immediately, and send a car for me, the discreet one. I don't want to alert the neighbors." Miss Davis was silent for a second, her worried expression shifting to one of cold professionalism. She knew what asset liquidation protocol meant. It was the contingency plan I had briefed her on from the very day I acquired Michael's debt. "Understood, Madam President. The private medical team will be there in 15 minutes. I will handle the legal side personally." I hung up, letting my hand fall limp onto the bed. This room, this house, Michael was always so proud, boasting that it was the fruit of his relentless hard work, a testament to his innate business genius. Ridiculous. He had no idea that 6 months ago, while he was busy lavishing money on Crystal and his socialite friends, the bank had downgraded his credit to the lowest tier. He had leveraged everything: this mansion, his fleet of luxury cars, and his future on phantom projects, and the bank was preparing to foreclose. It was I, through a subsidiary investment fund, who had quietly bought his entire bad debt package. Legally, I was his largest creditor. He was living in my house, driving my car, indirectly spending my money, yet he had thrown me out like a piece of trash. 15 minutes later, headlights swept across the front gate, but there were no blaring sirens. A sleek, black limousine, a high-end private medical transport vehicle, usually reserved for politicians or the ultra-wealthy, glided silently into the driveway. The doors opened, and it wasn't paramedics in white coats who stepped out. It was 4 men in black suits, wearing earpieces, their demeanor professional and cautious. They moved quickly, without a single wasted sound. "Miss Eleanor, we're here to take you," the leader said with a respectful bow. I nodded, letting them help me onto a stretcher. My body was exhausted, but my mind had never been sharper. Before leaving the bedroom, I looked back one last time. Michael wanted me to leave with nothing. Fine. I didn't take any clothes, any jewelry. I even took off the cheap wedding ring he had given me years ago and placed it neatly on top of the signed divorce papers. All I took was the phone, the control center of an entire hidden empire Michael knew nothing about. And I left him something. Not a material object, but a ticking time bomb. I had already sent a confirmation message to the group's legal department. The debt collection file would be activated exactly 72 hours after I left this house, 3 days. It was a grace period I granted him to enjoy the final moments of his high society illusion, to laugh with his mistress, to throw a party celebrating his freedom. The vehicle rolled smoothly away from the mansion. Through the tinted windows, I saw the rain still pouring down on the porch where, tomorrow, Michael would bring Crystal home, smugly thinking he had gotten rid of a burden. He didn't know that when I walked out that door, I wasn't just taking myself. I was pulling out the very foundation that kept his life from collapsing. "Michael," I thought, "you called me a useless invalid. You'll soon understand what real sickness is. The sickness of being broke, in debt, and utterly hopeless." I closed my eyes, letting the painkillers begin to seep into my veins. Sleep came, but it was a sleep free of nightmares, filled only with the quiet calm before a devastating storm. The next morning, the Los Angeles sun beat down, bright and harsh, as if trying to burn away all traces of the previous night's storm. In a soundproof VIP room at a private hospital, I sat propped against pillows, an IV line in the back of my hand, my eyes glued to the iPad on my lap. The smart home system I had secretly installed, the one Michael never bothered to learn how to operate, had now become my eyes, allowing me to witness the ridiculous farce of my pathetic husband's new beginning. The mansion gates swung open. The Porsche glided in, proud as a predator returning to its den after a successful hunt. Michael got out, beaming, hand in hand with Crystal. She stepped out of the car in a flashy, gaudy dress, slinking like a snake. Her high heels clicked loudly on the marble tiles that I had personally traveled to Italy to select. Oh my God, this house is, massive. And you waited until now to bring me here? Crystal's shrill voice echoed through the device's speakers. It was so grating I had to turn the volume down. Well, it's all yours now, baby, Michael laughed, the satisfied chuckle of a man who had just shed a heavy burden. They stepped inside, and then both froze. There was no scene of chaos, no clothes strewn about, no dampness or smell of antiseptic from a sick person who had just left. The house was spotless, almost sterile. My cleaning crew had worked with terrifying efficiency in the early hours of the morning. The bedding in the master bedroom had been replaced with a crisp, new set of pristine white silk sheets, without a single wrinkle. The closets were empty, the vanity cleared of every lipstick. It was as if Eleanor had never existed in this place. Did your ex-wife get so scared she ran for the hills? Crystal pouted, running a finger with a blood-red manicure over a dust-free surface. I totally thought she'd be, crying and making a scene. She knows her place, Michael sneered, stroking his mistress's hair. That kind of boring, small-town woman. When I say go, she goes. This space is ours now. I watched them fall onto the bed where I had lain in a feverish haze just the night before. Their shamelessness made my stomach churn. Not with jealousy, but with disgust. The design in this room is so boring, Crystal whined, her eyes scanning the room critically. It's so dark and old-fashioned, just like your ex-wife. Gray and white? It looks like a funeral home. Then we'll tear it all down, Michael declared magnanimously. Whatever you want, you get. We'll change the curtains to a hot pink for good vibes, you know? She pointed around the room, and then her eyes landed on a distinguished antique writing desk placed in a corner of the living room, a family heirloom that had been in my family for generations, where I often sat to pray for Michael's safety on his business trips. And that old desk over there? It's so creepy. Can we get rid of it? I want to put a wine fridge there with some imported statues. Her taste was appallingly cheap. I gripped the edge of my iPad. Cheap. She used that word to describe the minimalist, elegant interiors designed by an internationally award-winning architect I had hired. She wanted to throw out a priceless family heirloom for a wine fridge. Fine, enjoy it while it lasts. Because the good vibes she was hoping for were about to turn into a streak of very bad luck. That afternoon, the mansion was abuzz with activity. Michael, high on his victory, decided to turn his first day of freedom into a lavish party to show off his success. He called all his friends in the business world, the wannabe entrepreneurs and crypto bros he had always longed to be accepted by. Hey, Tom, you there? Come over to my new mansion tonight. Housewarming and introducing the new Mrs. Stone. Yeah, the new Porsche I got yesterday drives like a dream. Come on by, we're not stopping till we're drunk. Through the camera, I saw Michael pacing the living room, his voice booming, gesturing wildly like a king. He wanted to prove to the world how rich and successful he was, and that leaving me was the best decision of his life. To match his new status, Michael didn't hesitate to order a 5-star catering service. Give me your most exclusive VIP menu, he commanded over the phone, glancing lovingly at Crystal. Alaskan king crab, Wagyu steak, lobster. And for the wine, just bring a few bottles of your best-aged Napa Cabernet. Money is no object. I did a quick mental calculation. This party would easily cost him upwards of $20,000. Michael took a card from his wallet, a credit card whose limit was backed by the cash flow from my own company. He placed it on the marble countertop, the metal glinting under the crystal chandelier. He thought it was his power, but he didn't know that the real power lay at my fingertips. Just as the celebratory atmosphere was reaching its peak, as the catering staff began to set up the dishes, I lightly tapped an icon on my remote control interface. Click. The crystal chandelier in the living room abruptly went out. The entire house was plunged into the dim twilight. Ah, Crystal screamed, clinging to Michael's arm. What was that? A power outage? Michael fumbled for his phone, using its flashlight. Probably just a tripped breaker. This is a smart house, after all. Let me check. But it wasn't just the lights. The smooth jazz from the ceiling speakers cut out. The automated blinds, which had been open, slowly began to close, shutting out the last of the evening light and turning the room into a sealed box. The central air conditioning stopped, and the air quickly became stuffy. "Why is the Wi-Fi gone too?" Crystal whined, looking at her phone. "I was just about to go live to show off the house." Michael ran back and forth, frantically tapping the touchscreen control panels on the walls. But they were all unresponsive, the screens showing only a cold black, like the silence I had endured last night. "The network in this area must be down for maintenance," Michael said, trying to reassure her, sweat starting to bead on his forehead. "Don't worry, it'll be back on in a minute." High-tech houses. Sometimes they're more trouble than they're worth. I watched his flustered state through the infrared camera, a slight smile playing on my lips. "It's not maintenance, my dear ex-husband. The house is starting to reject you. This smart home system was programmed to recognize its true owner. And when the owner initiated a lockdown, it would become a concrete tomb. This was just a gentle prelude. The main event was tonight's party. When the lights came back on, and when that black card was swiped through the payment terminal, that's when this tragicomedy would reach its climax. Enjoy the darkness, Michael and Crystal. Because from this moment on, it's the only thing that truly belongs to you. At precisely 7 p.m., I tapped my iPad screen, restoring power to the mansion. The crystal chandelier blazed back to life. The AC system hummed, and smooth jazz once again filled the air as if nothing had happened. Michael let out a sigh of relief, smoothing his sweat-dampened hair. He thought it was just a random technical glitch. He didn't know I turned the power back on not to help him, but to illuminate the stage for the tragic comedy about to unfold. The brighter the lights, the more humiliating the fall. Guests began to arrive in droves. A mix of his wannabe business partners, tattooed social climbers dressed in flashy suits, and Crystal's gaggle of friends who also sold questionable products online. The clinking of glasses and the sound of fake laughter echoed through the spacious living room. Michael moved through the crowd like a peacock, a wine glass in hand, a perpetual grin on his face. He was at the peak of his manufactured glory. "Everyone, dig in. Tonight, I'm serving only the best. Alaskan king crab, Wagyu beef. Make yourselves at home," Michael announced grandly, clapping the catering manager on the shoulder. It was time. The manager, a young but professional man, bowed politely but firmly. "Sir, as per our policy for large, last-minute bookings, we require a 50% deposit before we can begin serving the main courses." "A small matter," Michael laughed loudly, his voice booming for the benefit of his friends who were watching. He pulled out his alligator skin wallet and artfully produced his black credit card, the one with a $50,000 limit he loved to flash around. He handed the card to the staff member. The payment terminal beeped once, then fell silent. A bright red light blinked. "Transaction declined," the employee said quietly. Michael's brow furrowed, his smile stiffening slightly. "Must be a network error with your machine. Try it again." The second attempt yielded the same mocking, blinking red light. The atmosphere began to cool. A few curious glances were cast his way. Michael started to get flustered. He snatched the card back, tossed it on the table, and pulled out another. A Visa, a MasterCard, an Amex. 3 different cards from 3 different banks. The result was still a big fat 0. "This is ridiculous," Michael snapped, sweat beading on his forehead. "There's more than enough money in those accounts to last a lifetime. How can they be declined?" In my hospital room, I took a sip of warm water, watching his reddening face on the screen with a sense of calm release. "Michael, have you forgotten that all of those secondary cards are authorized under my name?" And this afternoon, the credit freeze command was sent simultaneously to all the banks. "Financially, you are now a man with no assets. Just do a wire transfer. This machine is useless," Michael muttered, his hands trembling as he opened his banking app. I held my breath, waiting for this moment. On his phone screen, which I could picture perfectly, was not the long string of numbers he expected, It was a cold, cruel notification in red, account frozen at the request of the credit guarantor. Available balance, $0. Michael froze, his eyes wide, staring at the screen as if he'd seen a ghost. He swiped, logged out, logged back in. Still the same? How is this possible? He mumbled, his voice trailing off. The guests began to whisper, the murmurs spreading like an oil slick. What's going on? The great Michael Stone is short on cash? Maybe it's all just for show. I hear a lot of guys are faking it till they make it these days. The catering manager was losing his patience. Sir, if we don't receive the deposit, we'll have to pack up the food and charge you a service fee for the waiting time. Crystal, who had been busy live streaming the lavish spread, saw the escalating tension and quickly ended her broadcast. She rushed over, her face pale. What's wrong with you? It's just a few $1,000s. People are staring. The banking app is glitching, Michael stammered, sweat now soaking the collar of his shirt. I can't transfer. The room fell completely silent, a humiliating quiet settling over the high-class party. To save face, Crystal gritted her teeth and yanked off her gold bracelet and a diamond-studded necklace. Take this as collateral, she said, slamming the jewelry on the table, her face flushed with shame. My husband will sort it out at the bank tomorrow and pay you in cash. This is so annoying. The manager picked up the jewelry, examined it for a moment, and reluctantly nodded. The party resumed, but the mood was ruined. The boisterous laughter was replaced by suspicious glances. Among the guests, I recognized Tom, a vice president at a local bank. He leaned over to the person next to him, speaking just loud enough for the whole table to hear. I just checked his credit profile. Stone's been flagged, rock bottom score. All his assets are frozen. No wonder his cards aren't working. That sentence was the party's death knell. Guests started to drift away. One feigned an urgent business call, another a sudden stomachache. Within 30 minutes, the mansion was empty. Plates of untouched Wagyu steak and cold lobster sat forlornly on the tables. Michael and Crystal's dream honeymoon night ended in a dreadful silence. There were no candles, no flowers, no romance, only the simmering start of an argument. You'd better explain this. What kind of millionaire doesn't have 20 grand to pay for dinner? Crystal screamed, throwing her knockoff designer handbag onto the sofa. I told you, it's a bank error. My ex-wife is messing with me. Michael yelled back, running his hands through his hair, pacing like a caged animal. An error that affects all your cards in your app? Or were you lying to me? Are you just some broke loser, pretending to be rich? Shut your mouth. I gave you this house, this car, and you dare talk to me like that? I turned off the iPad. In the darkness of my hospital room, I could hear the steady, calm beat of my own heart. This is just the beginning of your nightmare, Michael. Go ahead and fight, blame each other. Because when the sun rises tomorrow, what you'll be facing is not just shame, but the cold judgment of the law. On the morning of the third day, the air in the mansion was thick and suffocating, as if compressed by the storm of the previous night. Through the security cameras, I saw Michael sitting listlessly on the sofa, surrounded by the dirty dishes from the disastrous party. Crystal was hiding upstairs, probably busy deleting her boastful social media posts before people started flooding them with comments about her deadbeat millionaire. At precisely 8 a.m., the doorbell rang. Michael flinched, his dark-rimmed eyes looking towards the door. He was hoping it was a delivery or perhaps an apology from the bank for yesterday's technical issue. He shuffled to the gate, disheveled and sleep-deprived. But standing there wasn't a delivery driver. It was a delegation of 4 people, 2 uniformed LA County Sheriff's deputies, their badges displayed prominently, and 2 lawyers in dark suits carrying briefcases, their faces devoid of emotion. They were the legal sword I had been sharpening for the past 6 months. Mr. Michael Stone? The lead lawyer asked, his voice even but sharp. That's me. Who are you? Michael frowned, his defensive instincts kicking in. We represent LN Asset Management and the Sheriff's Department. We're here to serve official notice and document the seizure of mortgaged property. Michael stood frozen as the heavy iron gates swung open. They walked into the driveway like judges entering a courtroom for the final verdict. In the living room, The official notice of debt collection and property seizure was placed neatly on the marble coffee table where his black card had been declined the night before. What the hell is this? Michael snatched the paper, his hands trembling violently. I have a mortgage with the bank, and I make my payments every month. What right do you have to seize my property? The lawyer calmly opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick file. Mr. Stone, your $10 million debt, which includes the mortgage, car loans, and various business loans, was sold by the bank to our client, LN Group, 6 months ago. Did you not read the email notifications regarding the change of creditor? Michael's jaw dropped. He never had time to read those emails. He was too busy taking Crystal on vacations, choosing diamond rings, and plotting how to kick me out. But I've still been making the payments, he shouted, clinging to his last shred of reason. Correct. However, you are in serious breach of Clause 14.3 of the restructured credit agreement. Borrower's moral and reputational standing, the lawyer said, pointing to a highlighted line. The contract explicitly states that the borrower must maintain a stable marital status and not engage in scandals that could affect their ability to repay the debt. Your unilateral filing for divorce from Miss Eleanor Vance and the financial scandal at your party last night have triggered the clause for immediate debt recall. I allowed myself a faint smile as I watched. That clause was something I had personally insisted on when I bought the debt package. I knew Michael's character. I knew this day would come. I had set a moral trap, and he had willingly walked right into it with his own betrayal. The total amount due for immediate settlement is $10,450,000, including principal, interest, and penalties. The sheriff's deputy stated, holding a small camera to officially record Michael's reaction. You have 24 hours to settle this amount. If you fail to do so, we will proceed with sealing the property and eviction at 8 a.m. tomorrow. 24 hours. Over $10 million. Michael collapsed onto the sofa, his face ashen. Are you insane? Where am I supposed to get that kind of money immediately? That is your problem, Mr. Stone, the lawyer said, closing his briefcase and standing up. We are simply enforcing the law. Good day. They left as quickly as they came, leaving Michael alone amidst a sea of legal papers. A financial death sentence had been served. Panic began to set in. Michael scrambled for his phone, his fingers dialing frantically. I watched as he called the buddies from last night's party. Tom? Hey, it's Mike. Listen, man, could you loan me, say, $500,000? I'm in a bit of a cash flow crunch. Click. The line went dead. He called a second person, a third. The results were either voicemails or blunt refusals. The news of the fake millionaire with a frozen credit line had already spread through their circles. In his utter desperation, Michael did something I knew he would. He turned to a loan shark. He called a notorious hard money lender from the valley, putting the call on speaker, his hands shaking as he lit a cigarette. Hey, it's Mike Stone. I need $2 million. Hot. Whatever the interest rate, I'll pay. I'll put up the Beverly Hills mansion as collateral. A gravelly laugh came through the speaker, like a crow cawing. Stone? You think I'm a fool? The sheriff's department was just at your place this morning. The seizure notice is already in the public record. You trying to scam me into taking a lien on a property that's about to be locked up? Get lost before I lose my patience. Michael let the phone drop to the floor. He grabbed his head, messing up his perfectly styled hair. He was out of options. No bank, no friends, nothing. He was completely alone, trapped inside the massive fortune he thought was his, but which was in reality just a golden cage, its bars now squeezing tight. I glanced at the clock. 10 a.m., 22 hours left. And in those 22 hours, he would experience the feeling of being abandoned by the entire world, the same utter helplessness he had wanted me to suffer. But unlike me, he had no one to call, no hidden empire to activate. He only had Crystal, who was now peeking from the top of the stairs. Her eyes no longer flirtatious, but filled with the calculating gaze of a rat looking for a way off a sinking ship. Late afternoon on the third day, the sunlight faded, casting long, gloomy shadows across the mansion. On my iPad screen, I saw Michael still sitting there, motionless as a broken statue. He wasn't making calls anymore, wasn't screaming. He just stared blankly into the space where his high society dream had just shattered. But the silence didn't last. From the staircase, the sharp, hurried clicking of high heels echoed, no longer the graceful, gliding steps of before. Crystal appeared, dragging 2 large suitcases, the same ones she had brought when she moved in with the air of a new queen. She had heard everything. She had seen the rejected phone calls, the threats from the loan shark, and the property seizure notice lying on the table. The survival instinct of a professional gold digger had kicked in. "Where are you going?" Michael lifted his head, his voice hoarse, his bloodshot eyes fixed on her. Crystal didn't even look at him. She rushed to the display cabinet in the living room, her hands grabbing things indiscriminately. "Where am I going? Away from this dump. That's where. You think I'm going to stay here and be homeless with you?" She snatched the solid gold Rolex that Michael always wore to show off, a piece he had bought with money embezzled from a company fund. She quickly shoved it into her Birkin bag, another luxury gift he had given her in their happier days. What are you doing?" "That's my stuff." Michael lunged, trying to grab the bag. "Your stuff?" Crystal let out a shrill, bitter laugh. She violently pushed his hand away. "What do you even own anymore, Michael? The house belongs to your ex-wife. The cars belong to the bank. What are you talking about, Crystal? You said you loved me. You said all you needed was to be with me." Michael stammered, disbelief etched on his gaunt face. He still couldn't believe his ears. He still clung to the fantasy that their love was real, destined. "Wake up, you idiot!" Crystal screamed in his face, spit flying from her mouth, her beautifully made-up face now twisted in a hideous snarl. "I loved your money. I loved the title of director's wife. Who would love an old, debt-ridden man who just got dumped by his wife? You think you're so great? You were just a piggy bank for me to break. And now that the bank is empty, I'm out." Michael stood frozen. Crystal's words were a slap in the face, harder than the divorce papers, more painful than any court summons. Enraged, he lunged at her, trying to wrestle the bag away. "You witch! I left my wife for you. Give me back my things. Let go of me, you pathetic loser." Crystal fought back, shoving him hard. In the chaotic struggle, Crystal used all her strength. Michael, already exhausted after 2 days without food or sleep and emotionally devastated, staggered backward. He lost his footing and fell hard onto the cold floor, right next to the remnants of the previous night's party. Painful, pathetic, humiliating. I watched the scene on my camera without a shred of pity. 2 greedy people tearing each other apart over the last scraps. A fitting end to the play. Crystal straightened her disheveled dress, then stomped her foot contemptuously right next to Michael's face. "Consider this payment for my services these past few months. Goodbye. Don't ever try to find me. I've already blocked your number." She dragged her suitcases to the door, where a waiting Uber was already parked. The front door slammed shut, its sound echoing in the empty house. Michael lay there, breathing heavily, a red mark on his cheek mingling with tears of humiliation. He curled into a ball, alone in the vast living room. Memories flooded back. He remembered 3 days ago, in this same place, in this same darkness, he had thrown me out into a stormy night. He had been so arrogant then, so cruel. He had a house, a car, a beautiful young mistress. Now he had nothing. Crystal had taught him a lesson I never had to voice. When the money goes, his so-called true love vanishes with it. But Michael's tragedy wasn't over. I wouldn't give him time to wallow in heartbreak. The clock struck 6 p.m. The final grace period was over. The mansion's gate opened once more. This time, it wasn't lawyers. It was a team of 6 security guards, tall and imposing in professional uniforms. The logo of LN Group's asset management division was printed on their chests. They entered the house decisively and coldly, not bothering to knock. Legally, this was now company property. Mr. Michael Stone. The team leader's voice boomed like thunder. The eviction order is effective immediately. You are ordered to vacate the premises. Michael scrambled to his feet, his eyes glazed over. Give me one more night. I have nowhere else to go. That's not our concern. The leader signaled. Two guards immediately moved in, grabbing Michael under each arm and lifting him as if he were an empty sack of trash. "Let go of me! This is my house! I'm a director!" Michael struggled weakly, shouting meaningless phrases. They dragged him out onto the patio, past the sparkling blue pool, past the garden I had personally tended. When they reached the front gate, they dropped him on the sidewalk. The heavy iron gate clanged shut in front of him. The sound of the lock clicking was dry and final. The team leader affixed a large, official seal to the gate, then turned and walked back inside without a second glance at the man sitting crumpled on the ground. Michael sat there, on the dusty sidewalk, still wearing the wrinkled, sour-smelling clothes from the day before. He looked up at the brightly lit mansion that was now, forever, no longer his. He had been thrown out in the exact same way he had thrown me out. The only difference was that when I left, I took my dignity and a plan. Michael left with nothing but empty hands and a shattered soul. I turned off the iPad. The screen went dark, reflecting my calm, impassive face. End of Act 1. Now, it was time for a rebirth from the ashes. Not for him, but for me. The Los Angeles skyline was a dazzling, magnificent spectacle from the 68th floor of the downtown skyscraper. The city below looked like a glittering galaxy. I sat at the head of the table in a VIP conference room, surrounded by business partners from South Korea. The atmosphere was formal, the air filled with the scent of premium coffee and the soft rustle of documents a world away from what I had experienced just a few days prior. I was in the middle of a presentation on the market expansion strategy for our new line of organic cosmetics. Everything was going perfectly. My iPad Pro was connected to the giant LED screen behind me, displaying growth charts and projections. Suddenly, the large screen flickered. A FaceTime video call interrupted the presentation. The entire room paused, all eyes turning to the screen. The name displayed there made a cold smile touch my lips. Ex-husband. Under normal circumstances, I would have flusteredly declined the call and apologized to my partners. But not tonight. Tonight, I wanted to give the past a definitive answer. I didn't just ignore it. I slid my finger to accept the call, right there on the interface that was now magnified 100 times. The face of Michael Stone appeared, filling the entire 200-inch LED screen. A collective gasp went through the room. This was not the dapper, well-groomed director in an Italian suit. On the screen was a pathetic man, his face covered in patchy stubble, his eyes sunken and dark from hunger and sleeplessness. Behind him were the blurry lights of a public park. The sound of traffic and wind buffeted the microphone. "Eleanor! Eleanor! Please!" His voice came through, reedy and broken, amplified by the conference room's surround sound system, making it sound even more pathetic. "You answered! Thank God! You answered!" I sat perfectly still, my hands folded on the glass table, my back straight. I said nothing, letting the silence of the room stand in stark contrast to the chaotic noise on his end. "I'm so hungry, Eleanor," Michael whimpered, wiping his nose with a dirty hand. "I'm at a park downtown. I haven't eaten since yesterday afternoon. They threw me out. Crystal. She scammed me. She took everything." He brought the camera closer to his face, his red-rimmed eyes pleading. "I miss you. I miss the chicken soup you used to make when I came home drunk. I know I was wrong. I was tricked, but I still love you. You're my wife. You wouldn't just watch me collapse on the street like this, would you? Where are you? Please, come open the door for me. I know you're just angry." The South Korean partners looked from me to the screen, their expressions a mixture of shock and awkwardness. They didn't understand English, but the language of failure and desperation needed no translation. Michael continued to ramble, clinging to the lifeline of our shared history, completely oblivious to my surroundings. He was on a spotty public Wi-Fi connection, staring at a tiny phone screen, so he couldn't see where I was. "Are you finished?" I finally spoke. My calm voice, amplified by the microphone, cut through his pathetic whining. Michael stopped, squinting at his screen. "Eleanor? Where are you? It looks strange." I signaled to my assistant, who adjusted a camera to pan across the entire conference room. Michael's small phone screen was now filled with images of one of the most luxurious spaces in Los Angeles. The high ceilings, the magnificent chandeliers, the impeccably dressed executives all staring at him like he was some strange creature. And finally, the camera settled on me, in a powerful white pantsuit, seated at the head of it all. "This is," Michael stammered, his voice trembling. "This is where I work, Michael," I answered, each word slow and sharp. "The place you once told me I wasn't qualified to even step into, because I was frumpy and useless." Michael was stunned. The brutal contrast between the charity food truck he was dreaming of and the multi-million-dollar contract on my table left him speechless. "Help you?" I asked with a humorless laugh. "Who are you begging? The leech you thought I was? Or the woman you threw out into the storm in the middle of the night?" "Eleanor, I'm begging you. Our house." "They took our house!" he cried, reverting to his victim narrative. "No one took anything," I interrupted, my gaze fixed on the camera lens, boring into his very soul. "You want to know who your creditor is? You want to know who bought your $10 million debt from the bank?" I stood up and walked closer to the giant screen, my shadow falling over his small, pathetic image. It was me. LN Asset Management. L for Lauren, my mother's name, N for... "Well, you can guess. The company belongs to me." The line went silent, except for the sound of the wind. Michael's face on the screen froze in utter horror. His jaw hung open, the phone in his hand shaking violently. He finally realized that the woman he had trampled on, the woman he had despised, was the one holding his entire life in her hands. "You have no right to call me your wife anymore. And that house was never yours." I raised my hand decisively. "The meeting will now resume. Hang up." The screen went black. The image of the pathetic man vanished, replaced by the proud, sleek logo of my company. I turned back to the conference table, offering my partners a serene smile. "My apologies for that minor interruption. That was a real-world case study in poor risk management. Shall we continue?" Out there, in that windswept downtown park, I knew Michael was standing frozen, holding a dark phone. This shock hadn't just crushed his hopes of getting money. It had completely demolished the last shred of his male ego. He had finally understood that the sky he had been so proud of flying in was, in fact, just the bottom of a well. And he was now at the bottom, looking up at the phoenix soaring high above. The next morning, the sky over downtown LA was a brilliant, cloudless blue, but the harsh sun couldn't seem to penetrate the thick, reinforced glass of the financial tower that housed the LN Group headquarters. I stepped out of the VIP elevator, the click of my heels on the marble floor echoing with a proud rhythm through the vast, cold lobby. I was flanked by my entourage, my assistant, the communications director, and a few business journalists trying to get a quick quote about my new project. I smiled, answering their questions briefly, with the calm demeanor of someone in complete control. But then, a noisy disturbance from the main revolving doors shattered the formal atmosphere. "Let go of me! I want to see my wife!" "My wife is the president here. How dare you stop me?" The hoarse, desperate shouts were both aggressive and pathetic. I didn't need to look to recognize that voice. It had haunted me for 5 years, from the sweet, deceptive whispers to the toxic curses on that rainy night. "Michael Stone." I signaled for my entourage to halt. The crowd of office workers and visitors began to part, forming a curious circle. At the center of the commotion, being held back by 2 large security guards, was a figure so wretched it was hard to believe. This was no longer Michael Stone, the slick director with gelled hair and overpowering cologne. Before me was a middle-aged man in a wrinkled, designer polo shirt stained with dirt and sweat. On his feet were worn-out flip-flops, probably the only footwear he could find after being thrown out. A sour stench of old sweat, stale alcohol, and failure emanated from him, causing those nearby to wrinkle their noses and step back. He had run here. I knew it. After last night's call, after pinpointing the building from the view behind me, he had clung to that final, desperate hope and dragged himself all the way to this lobby. When his cloudy eyes met mine, Michael froze. I stood there, about 30 feet away, my custom-tailored white pantsuit radiating power and coldness. The contrast between us was brutally stark. one at the pinnacle of success, the other in the gutter of society. "Eleanor! Eleanor!" Michael screamed, struggling to break free from the guards. He lunged towards me, all pride gone. He was about to kneel. Yes, he was about to get on his knees right in the middle of this Class A office building's lobby to cling to the legs of the woman he had called a leech just 3 days ago. "Stop," I didn't shout. Just one word, cold and sharp as clashing steel. My 2 personal bodyguards instantly stepped forward, forming a human wall, separating me from the filth that was rushing towards me. Michael stopped short and collapsed onto the polished floor. He looked up at me, his face a mess of tears and snot, his voice trembling as he pleaded, "Wife, please, forgive me. I was wrong. That woman, Crystal, she tricked me. She took everything and ran. I have nothing now. I'm so hungry. Eleanor, please, give me another chance. I swear I'll serve you for the rest of my life." The crowd began to murmur. Phones were raised, recording and taking pictures. Michael knew this. He was making a gamble. He thought that I, a rising female president, would be afraid of the scandal, afraid of being labeled as a rich woman who abandoned her ex-husband, and would have to give in, to give him money, to shut him up. He still thought I was the weak Eleanor of the past, who was always afraid of embarrassing her husband. He was dead wrong. I took a step forward, past my bodyguards, and stood looking down at him. My eyes held no pity, no anger. They were empty, the way one looks at a piece of garbage. "Serve me?" I repeated, my voice echoing in the now silent lobby. "With what? With the $10 million debt you're carrying? Or with the tattered dignity you're currently displaying for everyone to see? I can work. I have management experience. Let me work at the company. Any position. I'll even be a security guard." Michael stammered, his hand trying to reach for the hem of my pants, but falling short. I let out a cold laugh, a sound that made the onlookers shiver. "You once said I was a frumpy housewife who only belonged in the kitchen, unworthy of walking beside you. You once said your career was built entirely by your own hands, that I was just an obstacle. I turned to the crowd, then looked directly into the lens of a reporter who was live streaming nearby. I wanted the whole world to hear this. Today, I'm going to let you see the truth. The woman you threw away, the one you mocked as useless, is the person who signs the paychecks for the thousands of employees in this building. I was the one who approved your promotions in the past. I was the one who funneled money to save your failing projects. And today, I am the one signing the final order to fire you from my life. Permanently." Michael's face went white. The public revelation of the truth made him shrink. The looks of admiration he once received had now turned into utter contempt. "You are not worthy of stepping in here," I continued, my voice hardening. "Not because you're poor, but because your very presence pollutes the air in this place." I turned to the head of building security. "Security, please escort this person out. And make sure to post his picture at all entrances. From this day forward, he is not welcome within a 1-block radius of the LN Group headquarters." "Yes, Madam President." The 2 large guards immediately hoisted Michael to his feet. He went limp, all fight gone out of him. He understood that his pathetic act had failed miserably. He had not only failed to gain anything, but he had also personally destroyed what was left of his career and reputation. Michael's cries faded as he was dragged towards the revolving doors and thrown back onto the hot Los Angeles sidewalk. I adjusted my jacket, lightly flicked my hair, and turned to the stunned reporters with a calm smile. "My apologies for that little incident, everyone. Now, where were we? Yes, the charitable foundation to support female entrepreneurs, wasn't it?" I walked away, leaving the ghost of my past behind me. The glass doors closed, shutting out the noise, leaving only cold, absolute victory. Michael was done, but his punishment wasn't over just by being thrown out. Miss Davis was waiting for him at the back entrance with one final legal gift he couldn't refuse. He thought being dragged out of the lobby and thrown onto the hot sidewalk in front of news cameras was the ultimate humiliation. He was wrong. For someone like Michael Stone, a blow to his reputation was just the surface. I needed him to live in torment. I needed him to realize that for the past 5 years, he was nothing but a puppet dancing on a stage I had built with my own money. Just as the security guards were about to let him drop onto the concrete, a hand went up, signaling them to stop. It was Miss Kimberly Davis, the Iron Lady, my most trusted right hand. She walked over, her face a cold, emotionless mask, and pointed towards the service alley behind the building. "Take him to engineering room 3. The president wants this handled cleanly. No trash left floating on the street." Michael was dragged back inside, not to a luxurious office, but to a soundproof room, 4 white, sterile walls, with only a metal table and a single chair. I didn't go in. I sat in the main control room, watching everything on a high-definition monitor. I didn't want to breathe the same air as him anymore. Letting Miss Davis, the keeper of all my financial secrets, lay the final cards on the table was more than enough. Miss Davis threw a thick file onto the metal table. The sharp thud made Michael jump. He cowered in the chair, hugging himself, trembling from the cold and fear. "Read it," Miss Davis commanded, her voice like ice. Michael shakily opened the first page. What he saw wasn't a lawsuit, but the consolidated financial report for LN Group from 5 years ago. His eyes widened when he saw the founder's name, Eleanor Vance. The company's incorporation date coincided with the day he got his first major promotion. "You think you're so talented, Mr. Stone?" Miss Davis sneered, flipping to the next page. It was a detailed bank statement. On one side was a column labeled Husband's Allowance, showing consistent deposits of $1,000 each month, with the memo line, "Groceries, be frugal." Michael stared at the words, his face flushing, then turning a deathly gray. He remembered the condescending look on his face whenever he transferred that meager sum to my account, expecting me to manage the gourmet meals, utilities, and gifts for his entire family. He had been so proud that he was providing for me. But right next to that column was another, labeled Strategic Investment, Spousal Support. The numbers were in the millions. Acquisition of 15% stake in competitor company to secure director position for M. Stone, $2 million. Crisis management for M. Stone's fraudulent project, 2023, $800,000. Acquisition of non-performing bank loan to protect husband's reputation, $10 million. "Look closely," Miss Davis said, tapping her finger on the paper. "The pathetic $1,000 you threw at the president each month wasn't even enough to cover her cat's food budget. But she accepted it. She played the part of the frugal wife, pinching every penny so you could look good in front of your friends. You thought you were a tycoon? You were just a leech, wrapped in a businessman's suit that your own wife paid for." Michael buried his face in his hands, letting out choked sobs. This truth was more devastating than bankruptcy. His male ego, the one thing he had left to cling to, had just been pulverized. He realized he was never the phoenix. He was just a prize chicken I had raised in a gilded cage. But Miss Davis wasn't finished. She picked up a remote and turned on a TV mounted on the wall. A video started playing in crystal clear quality. It showed Michael and Crystal's secret dates, their vulgar conversations, their plots to get his hands on my assets, the times they had called me useless, and then the scene from that rainy night, him throwing me, his feverish wife, out of the house like a bag of trash. "This is evidence of adultery, spousal abuse, and violation of marital laws," Miss Davis said evenly. "Not to mention we have the complete file on your forgery of bank loan documents 3 years ago to get money to support your mistress. The president used her personal funds to cover that up for you." Then, Miss Davis pushed a single sheet of paper towards him. "But now, she has no reason to protect you anymore." Michael looked up, his eyes filled with despair. "What? What do you want?" "2 options," Miss Davis said, holding up 2 fingers. "1. We submit all of this evidence to the district attorney, with charges of fraud, embezzlement, and forgery, plus the lawsuit from the bank. You'll be in prison for at least 15 years. You'll pay for the rest of your life." Michael shuddered, shaking his head violently. He feared prison more than anything. 2, Miss Davis continued, pointing to the paper in front of him. "You sign this. A full waiver of all claims to any assets, past or future, and a legally binding agreement to never appear before Miss Eleanor Vance again or mention her name in any capacity. In return, we will not press criminal charges. You will be free." "Free?" Michael laughed bitterly. tears streaming down his dirty face. Free to do what, when I don't have a penny to my name? That is the price you pay, Miss Davis said coldly. Free to live the life of a normal person, to taste the poverty you once despised, or go to prison. I watched him through the monitor. Michael picked up the pen, his hand shaking uncontrollably. He looked at the paper, then back at the TV screen showing his cruelty towards me. He knew he had lost, utterly and completely. He put the pen to the paper, his signature a weak, crooked scrawl, a stark contrast to the bold, arrogant signature on the divorce papers 3 days ago. A teardrop fell, smudging the fresh ink. He had just signed his own sentence of exile. Good. Miss Davis collected the paper and put it in her briefcase. Security? Show him to the back door. Don't let him dirty the main lobby again. 2 guards stepped forward and lifted Michael to his feet. He was limp, like a soulless puppet. Before being dragged away, he turned his head and stared directly at the security camera in the corner of the room, as if he knew I was watching. His lips moved, forming a silent word that I could read clearly. Sorry. I turned off the monitor. The control room was plunged into darkness. That apology, Michael, it's as cheap as the $1,000 you used to throw at me. I don't need it. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the tiny cars below. Michael was being pushed out the back door, disappearing into the anonymous crowd, becoming a speck of dust in this glittering city. He was free, and so was I. But my freedom was the sky, and his was the abyss. 1 month later, I sat in my top-floor office, flipping through the final report from the private investigator. Tucked inside were a few blurry photos, taken in the dim, pre-dawn light. One photo showed a man heaving a heavy sack of potatoes onto his back, his spine bent into a painful curve. It was Michael Stone, 3 a.m., at the Los Angeles Wholesale Produce Market. The air was thick with the smell of diesel fumes, rotting vegetables, and the coarse shouts of truck drivers. This was Michael's new world. No air conditioning, no designer cologne, and certainly no dignity. He had aged a decade in just 30 days. His once pampered skin was now dark and leathery from the sun and grime. His hands, which had only known how to sign documents and hold wine glasses, were now calloused and cracked. In another photo, Michael was squatting on the curb next to a murky puddle, hunched over a cheap styrofoam container, a $5 meal for the lowest-paid laborers. I could imagine the taste: dry rice, a few strands of greasy, overcooked greens, and a thin slice of fatty pork. He picked up the piece of pork with his chopsticks. As he was about to put it in his mouth, another worker bumped into him, knocking it to the ground. He froze, staring at the piece of meat lying in the dirt. The Michael of 1 month ago would have thrown a tantrum if his steak was slightly overcooked. But the Michael of today, after a moment's hesitation, picked it up, wiped it on his filthy shirt, and shoved it into his mouth, chewing ravenously. That wasn't just hunger. It was complete surrender to his fate. "Hey, Scarface! Eat faster! New truck's here! You're late! I'm docking your pay!" a foreman yelled. Michael flinched and quickly shoveled the rest of the rice into his mouth, his posture servile and pathetic. Just then, he overheard a conversation from some vendors nearby. "Did you hear? That influencer girl, Crystal, the one who sold all that fake diet tea? She got arrested." "No way. For what? Selling junk?" "Worse. Running a whole pyramid scheme. Racked up millions in debt from her lifestyle. The feds raided her hideout. Total disgrace." Michael stopped chewing, the rice catching in his throat. Crystal. His true love, the one he had discarded me for, the one who taught him the cruelest lesson in pragmatism. She had received her sentence, too. The price for greed, laziness, and a parasitic lifestyle. Michael laughed, a bitter, twisted smile. He swallowed the lump of rice. He and Crystal, 2 people who thought they were the smartest in the world, had ended up meeting at the bottom of society's barrel in the most humiliating ways. Suddenly, a brilliant light from across the street flooded the grimy market, overpowering the dim yellow lamps. It was a massive digital billboard on the side of a shopping mall, broadcasting a live awards ceremony, the American Entrepreneur of the Year Gala. Michael looked up and froze. There, On a screen hundreds of feet wide was my image, clear, radiant, and powerful. I was standing on the stage, holding a golden trophy, a gentle but firm smile on my face. The text below read, Eleanor Vance, president of LN Group, an inspiration for female entrepreneurs and founder of the Golden Heart Charity Foundation. We cannot choose where we are born, but we can choose how we live. My voice boomed from the powerful speakers, clear and strong, echoing through the noisy market. I have walked through the fiercest storms of my life to understand that only self-reliance and integrity can be your strongest shield. Michael stood up, his legs trembling. The container in his hands fell to the ground. Thump, white rice scattered into the dirty puddle at his feet, mixing with the black mud. He looked at me on the screen, a phoenix resurrected from the ashes that he himself had set ablaze. I was high above, shining, while he was down here, filthy and foul-smelling, fighting for scraps with the rats. Tears welled up in his sunken eyes. Not the crocodile tears from the day he came to my office. These were tears of true, belated regret. He realized he hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost a fortune, a partner, a treasure that he had foolishly thrown in the trash in exchange for a worthless, glittering pebble. Stone, what are you doing just standing there? The truck is here. The foreman's voice snapped him back to his brutal reality. Michael started, quickly bent down to pick up the empty container, and tossed it in a trash can. He wiped the hot tears from his face with his sleeve and bowed his head, avoiding the light from the billboard. It was too bright, too pure for his dark life now. He turned his back on me, turned his back on the past. Michael trudged towards the waiting truck, his thin shoulders hunching to receive another heavy sack. His long shadow stretched across the dirty ground, wavering, before being completely swallowed by the night. I closed the file and fed it into the shredder. The machine whirred, grinding the last images of Michael Stone into 1,000 tiny pieces. The end. I stood up and walked out onto the breezy balcony. A new dawn was breaking, painting the city skyline in shades of pink and gold. The sweetest revenge isn't seeing your enemy suffer. It's becoming so happy, so radiant, and so free that their very existence becomes meaningless. I took a deep breath of the fresh morning air. It was time to start a new chapter, one that had only my name on it, Eleanor Vance. The story serves as a profound cautionary tale about greed, betrayal, and the consequences of taking for granted those who have sacrificed for you. It shows how the allure of money, fame, and desire can lead individuals to lose their morals, their relationships, and their very character. It also illustrates how resilience, intelligence, and a strong will can help one overcome profound pain, turning trauma into the strength needed for self-preservation and ascent. The narrative ultimately affirms that true power lies not in ostentatious displays of wealth, but in the control of one's own destiny, the knowledge of one's own worth, and the ability to let justice speak louder than tears.